Well, first of all, I want to say it's a pleasure to be here today and to see all your faces. So I look forward to a presentation about the racetrack that I think you will find very enjoyable. Before I get started, I want to introduce someone that's here tonight that I'm so happy to see, and that's Linda Darrell. Linda Darrell's in the back here. Anybody here at MERPA? You know what MERPA is? The Meadowdale International, I'm going brain dead. Preservation, go ahead, Meadowdale
International Raceway Preservation.
I know that, and I usually get it straight, but I just couldn't, my brain went totally brain dead. Okay. So Linda actually started that. How many years ago, Linda? 6 years ago. And you know what? Everybody knows about the special car show that's held at the racetrack every year in September, right? It's a big deal, and everybody knows about that, and it has a huge attendance. Linda is the one, through MERPA, that puts that on every year. So that's one of the special occasions. And they're also doing something very special this year, which I want to mention. That's the dinner after the car show this year. By the way, the date is September the 20th. And afterwards, they're going to have a special dinner at, what's it called, the McGraw Wildlife over on 25.
Where's that?
Right by the Milk Pail. And for those who don't know, it's by the Milk Pail Restaurant, just past the Milk Pail Restaurant. And there's going to be a special speaker there. And that is?
It'll be the Meister Racing Team, which, I don't know if any of you remember Meister beer, but back in the late 50s, early 60s, they had a racing team. And so all the drivers from that team who made Meadowdale their home base will be in attendance to tell us some stories.
Yes. And you'll see some of their cars actually on the presentation today. And one in particular was Augie. Augie and Harry. Two very famous racers who are still alive, and they have a wealth of information and history behind them. So it'd be great to hear them speak at that dinner. So for those who are interested, go on the MERPA website, and you can get all the information on there that you need. And we'll be handing out flyers today about that, so you have that available too.
Some newsletters and some postcards about it.
Yes. Okay. So you know what? Can we turn the lights off so it's a little better in here? Would that be okay? Let's get started, okay? So I'm going to get out of everybody's way. Okay, so to begin here, we're talking about the Midwest motorsport legend, Meadowdale Raceways. How many here have walked Raceway Woods, have gone through that? Just about everyone here has walked that. So we know the beauty of that area. And this is what we see when we go there. We see the straightaway, how it looks today, for example. Or another picture of the straightaway where the bridge, which was put up about 3 or 4 years ago. Before that was a gully, you couldn't get across it, but now you can. You can walk the entire race course today. Here is an extension leading back to the main straightaway. The original pavement is still here. Here's a great picture. When you come in off of Huntley Road and you walk up the hill onto the racetrack, this is pretty close to where you're located at. And we'll talk more about this later on in this area, but this is what you see when you get there. There's the old auto bridge located just past the Serpentine, which is still there to this day. When you walk along the paths of Raceway Woods, you're walking on what was at one time the mecca of auto racing in the Midwest. This silo displays the proud Meadowdale Raceway name and their sponsor, Pure Oil, to this day. That silo has been standing for probably close to 100 years. Let's go back to the 1950s. This is what it looked like originally, before a racetrack was ever built. It was a farm. There's the silo. We still see it to this day. These are the various farm buildings that were used. 31 is right here. So it's very interesting. At this time, this was owned by the Biesingers, the Biesinger family. Here's another picture. Picture is looking north. So here's 31 here. The barn had burned down in recent years when this photograph was taken. Here's all the other buildings. June 1958. This is a very, very special time, an important time for this area, for the racetrack, because the Biesinger farm on Route 31 began to be transformed into the mecca of auto racing in the Midwest, which is Meadowdale Raceways. I want to introduce, for any of you who don't know, this man, Leonard Biesinger. because this is the man in the heart and soul behind what began. He's noted for so much, not the least of which was the expansion of Carpentersville from a population of 1,543 people in 1953 to 17,424 people by 1960. So, he's the man behind all of this. Originally named Meadowdale, this development included not just homes, but also parks, schools, churches. He developed an entire community. This, by the way, is Route 25. The shopping center would be right here. It wasn't even paved yet. Here's a picture of the shopping center, Meadowdale Shopping Center, which he also developed. This originally was an 85-acre shopping center that was recognized in the 50s and the early 60s as one of the best shopping establishments in the country. It was huge. Where was this? Yeah. It's still there. It's on 25. Today it's literally half the size, if that, of what it used to be.
I didn't realize that was still the name.
It was, well,
That's not the name of it.
no.
Yeah.
Meadow was originally meant to be called Meadowdale. He wanted to start his own town, but the communities around the area fought him on that and wouldn't allow him to start his own town by itself. So he ended up annexing into Carpentersville. That's what happened, okay? But look at the crowds. This is how it was when I was a child, when I was a kid. I remember the shopping center being like that. It was amazing. Weebles, used to have a Carson Perry Scott, used to have an ice skating rink inside an inside mall with a restaurant around it. It was a beautiful establishment. But he is also the man behind what has continued to fascinate and interest us all here today, and that is Meadowdale Raceways. Here's an aerial photograph looking east of a portion of the racetrack, not the whole racetrack, just a portion of it. Here's the back straight. Here's the beginning of the straightaway. Here's what was called the Monza Wall, which we'll discuss later. All these homes that you see here, they're still there. These streets are, I think this is called Ranch Drive, if I'm not mistaken, right here, just to give you an idea of where you were at, okay? So the river would be back in here, and here's old Carpentersville back in here. Now, the actual construction of Meadowdale Raceways began in early June of 1958. The inaugural race was set for September 14th, just about 100 days after they broke ground. So they intended to build and develop this entire racetrack, pavement and all, everything, within 100 days, which is unbelievable. Here they are. It's pretty much laid out. It's not paved yet. Pavement has begun right here on the straightaway, but that's it. This section here, well, we'll discuss that in a few minutes about that. Biesinger's crews, they gave 110%, working day and night to get this track ready within 100 days. So where the farm buildings once stood became part of the 3.27-mile racetrack that wound through 230 acres of property. Here we are looking at close to the opening day, but it wasn't the opening day, but still, despite that, this is the Gate 2 entrance, which is located off of Route 31. And just to give you an idea of where this is at, I actually went to the other side of these gates and took a picture looking east, and you all will know where it's at once you see this. I bet you, right now, does anybody know where these gates are at to this day? Probably no one does. I tell you the truth, I lived there my whole life, and I never even saw them until after I started working on this book. So I'm going to show you why. This is how they look today. They actually changed them from wood to brick later on. And here we are. Here's that the shopping center with, what's that restaurant, the Spanish restaurant called again? Sombrero. There you go. El Sombrero. It's right here. So, and that small little strip mall, it's right across the street from that. Those are the gates. That was the original Gate 2 entrance of the racetrack. Isn't that something? Many don't know that. So the gates are still there. Now, here's showing development of the track. This is the development of the Monza Wall. This was no ordinary race course by any means of the word. The Monza Wall, seen here under construction, boasted the steepest turn in the auto racing world. It was 45-degree incline and a 180-degree turn. It was called the Monza Wall, named after the Monza racetrack in Italy. And that wall there was 38 degrees. This is 45 degrees. So this was the highest, steepest turn in the racing world when this track was being built. And look at how they're actually using the tractor, the machinery and so on. This is like a cable that's being used to help the machinery get up and down the track. This is a great picture. This is when the track was being under construction, and they had a little photo shoot here. I received this picture about a year ago. This photo came from the Bruns family in Carpentersville. And it's important because right here in this picture, this is Elmer Bruns, who was the father of the man who sent me the photograph. That was his father in his 1910 Ford Model T. Isn't that beautiful? I tell you. Now this is a great picture. This shows you a perfect overview of the track, the entire track, 3.27 miles. And this will go through this in detail. First of all, it boasted not only the Monza Wall being the highest inclined turn in the world, in the racing world, it had the longest straightaway in the world. Right here in Carpentersville, we had this racetrack. Can you believe that? If this track was here today, this would have changed the entire dynamic of this entire area so much. It's unbelievable. Let's go through this though. So here's the straightaway. Here's Greg's, by the way, I should say this before I get started. He named the various segments of the track after people that were close to him. For example, Greg's Corkscrew. He had a son, Greg. This is called Greg's Corkscrew. And it was called that because it was a turn. As it turned, you went downward and twisted down, like a corkscrew does. That's how it was developed. Here's White House Bend. White House is a close member of the Biesingers, close friend. And I think he's also involved in the construction, if I'm not mistaken, of the track.
He only passed away about a year or two ago.
That's right. That's right. Serpentine. Here's Carl's Bend. Here's Stephen's Straight. There is the back straight. Doan's Corner. Anybody remember Doan Chevrolet? Doan Chevrolet was very much intimately involved with this racetrack and with the Biesinger family. So it was named after Mr. Doan himself. And here's the Monza Wall. Now I want to mention that everything you see here was built within 100 days, except for this. This section here was never developed. It never became an entire oval. That was their intention, but it never took place. And then also, these here were built, these stands, but this here never got built either, these stands over here. So other than these stands, and other than this back turn here, and the stands there, everything else was constructed and built up. Here's that gate 2 entrance, by the way. You see the gates here? So 31's right here. El Sombrito is right here today. Okay? The silo would be right over here. Okay, taken from high up on the Monza Wall on September the 4th, 1958, this is the inaugural day races taking place. There was reported attendance, now think about this, in this town back in the 50s, 100 to 150,000 people came opening day. Is that amazing? The tollway had just gotten built. I think the tollway opened 2 weeks before this was built, up here, up to 25 here. So the majority of people probably never even took that because they didn't know it was opened yet. And so the majority of people came on the two-way roads into this town. It was a congestion nightmare, to say the least. It was one of the things people talk about that time. But it was a big deal. But look how close the people are to the track. They're right along it. Here's another picture. This is taken from high up on the control tower number 8. Here we have a bird's eye view of the back straight leading right into the Monza Wall, right here. So here's the cars. And I love this picture because just to show you again where you're located at for those who have walked the track, when you come up Huntley Road and you come into that entranceway there, you are walking right up into here. That's where you're walking to. I've searched high and low for these. They are nowhere to be found. You can't even tell that they were ever there. I'm going to get a little closer to that. You can see that this here is actually an underpass. So the cars could come right under the track, and they could go over here. to inside there. This is how the cars got into the middle of the track, by going through here. You see that? Pretty cool, isn't it? Biesinger did things in a big way. He really did. This is a good example. This is a great view from the bleachers, looking south with the 4-story main control tower in view, as well as the paddocks and pits for the racers. Now, this photograph was taken on July 4th, 1959. So this is a beautiful view. What a great, it's hard to believe that all this existed right here and that today it's entirely gone. Who would have imagined, huh? Except for, of course, the Raceway woods today. Here's a closer photograph of the 4-story main control tower. This is around 1960. Now, this is Len's hairpin with the straightaway up above. Here's the straightaway here. Here's the Len's hairpin here. Very tight turn. And again, if you look over here, note the underpass. For those of us that have walked this Raceway woods over the years, there used to be a large tunnel. Remember that? A large metal tunnel you could walk under? It was a long time ago. It's completely gone now. They closed it up one side of it years ago, but within the last year or two, they totally covered it up with dirt. So now you can't even tell where it was, which is really a sad shame that they did that. This is where it was, right here. I love this picture, too. This is taken from the control tower number 1. Here's Len's hairpin here. Here's that same entrance, the tunnel. Here we are looking through the straightaway. And look, there's the bleachers up here. They had back behind the bleachers, they had a big refreshment area for refreshments and so on. A lot going on. And you'll notice that people are throughout the track. It's one thing about this. In most of these photographs, you'll notice that the bleachers are pretty empty. It's not that there weren't a lot of people there. It's that people weren't sitting in the bleachers. They were able to walk the entire track. So they could go anywhere they wanted to on the track to watch the cars. That's what they were doing. They weren't sitting down. They were walking all over the acreage. The opening day races, I got to say, were marred by 2 events. And this is probably one reason why the track, I say 2 reasons, I should say, why the track isn't here today. Okay? Because both of these factors were a negative thing that the track had to overcome for a long time. The first one is the weather. The weather on the opening day was not conducive to a race, and I'm going to tell you why. It was very, very windy. The gusts of the winds were around 25 miles per hour. The planted grass over the 230 acres that had been plowed over and was totally dirt did not even start to grow within time. So the acreage around the area was this dirt. So when you combine dirt, dryness, and wind, what do you get? A dirt storm. And this is what happened. And what did women wear back then? Women didn't go in blue jeans in the 50s. They wore dresses. And they wore light-colored dresses on a hot day. So could you imagine being a woman on a hot day wearing a dress and being pelted with dirt all day long? It turned off 100 to 150,000 people. So when you do that, when you turn off that many people, that is bad publicity. This was negative for the track, unfortunately. No fault of their own. The other thing is that on the 9th lap of the 3rd race on Sunday, Robert Walker, who was an Arkansas insurance individual, he looked behind him as his Ferrari approached Dolan's corner. A gust of dusty wind made him lose control of his car. He flipped end over end. He was killed in the crash. So on the opening day, a man gets killed. What does that do for a track? It gets the reputation of a killer racetrack. That wasn't good. It wasn't good, unfortunately. So these 2 events, the disgruntled spectators because of the wind and the dirt, due to the unpleasant dust and wind, and then also gaining the reputation as a killer track, would be 2 factors that the track would have to work very hard to overcome. And I got to tell you, I've talked to a lot of people over the years now about this. Anyone that I've talked to that was there on opening day, every time, the first thing they say to me, it was a dirty track. This is what they tell me. Everyone remembers the dirt and the wind. That's the first thing that comes to their mind. So it had an effect on them to this day, 50-some years later, more than that.
Do you think if you would have waited a year, it would have been popular?
Just 2 weeks. They could have waited 2 weeks. You know, if it would have been 2 weeks later, the grass probably would have grown. It wouldn't have been windy. It would have been a very pleasant experience. The track might even be here to this day. Isn't that something? Time and unforeseen occurrence befall us all. Ecclesiastes. Okay. Now, I talk about Robert Walker, the insurance man from Arkansas. Here's his car. That's his Ferrari. That's him on that day. This picture may have been taken within 10 minutes of his life ending, right here. Think of that. You know, isn't that something else? 22 years old. What did the professional racers have to say about Meadowdale back then? Just as Jim Rathman, he was the 1958 record-setting winner at Monza, Italy. He came to Meadowdale in 1958. He thought that the track would be real fast. That's what he said. And there he is standing with Mr. Biesinger on the left. This is Chuck Day, very, very well-known man at that time, one of the nation's most experienced drivers. He pronounced the course a good one, and he stated that next to Riverside, which was a testing California course, it's the best in the country. That's what he said. Chuck Day was the winner of the inaugural day feature race, driving one of the fastest racing cars of the day, one of Lance Reventlow's Scarabs. Talk about a beautiful car. Unbelievable. I'm going to show you. And this is a picture after his winning the race. There's Mr. Biesinger. Here's the announcer. There's Mr. Biesinger. There's Chuck Day. Lee Phillips. Anybody remember her? That's Lee Phillips. Saul Polk. Remember Polk brothers? They were a big deal here in Chicagoland. He was major involvement with this track, with advertising back for the opening races, the Polk brothers. So here they are, giving him the prize, of course, winning the race. And there's a picture of the Scarab. Not a real good picture, but a portion of it. There's a better picture. Isn't that a beautiful car? And note the name on there, Meister Browsers. Linda was talking about the Meister Browsers earlier, being there for that dinner. The Meister Browsers purchased the Scarabs from Mr. Reventlow, and they owned them for many years. Beautiful car. This picture was taken by a 9-year-old little boy. He actually lives in Carpentersville. He was very helpful to me in developing this book because he was there for every race, and he took photographs, which are slides, of the whole track, the history of the track. He had scrapbooks, everything. You would not believe what he had. So he gave me access, John Freeman. Yeah, he gave me access to these here. So I took these slides and I developed them. I went to, I forget which store I went to, but they were able to scan these slides in at I forget what the DPI was. Super high resolution. They came out beautiful, like brand new. Does anybody know who Lance Reventlow's mother was? This guy had money. More money than you and I can dream of. I'm going to tell you why. Barbara Hutton. That was his mother. Who's Barbara Hutton? For those who don't know, that are younger, Barbara Hutton, at 21 years of age, was one of the wealthiest women in the world, period. She was also married to Cary Grant, so she's known for that as well. But she's mainly known because of her wealth and the way she spent her money. She was very charitable in her life. She died at a very young age, pretty young age. But do you know who her grandfather was? This shows you where she got her money. Remember the Woolworth stores? F.W. Woolworth was her grandfather. So in 1979, the Woolworth stores were the largest department store chain in the world. This is when Kmart, all the other stores, Walmarts, were just maybe getting started, some of those. But Woolworth's was the largest. They're the ones who really coined the 5 and 10 store name and became a huge international corporation. It was unbelievable. Started by one man in the 1800s, F.W. Woolworth. Here's a great picture of Lance Reventlow right here. Here's Lance Reventlow sitting in his Scarab at Meadowdale at the paddock. Young man who died at a very young age also in a catastrophic accident regarding an airplane. So if you were racing in the racing circuit back in the 1950s and 60s, I got to tell you, you can count on it. They raced at Meadowdale. This is Fred Lorenzen, very, very well-known name in the racing world, particularly here in Chicagoland. He's still alive. He was a great man and did a great job of racing. Here he mentions Elmhurst is where he came from. This is a picture of the track with the stock cars walking around the Monza wall. I like this picture because of the fact of the two cars in the front. You know why? There's Fred Lorenzen and there's Lance Raventlow. So although Lance Raventlow had the Scarabs, he also did other racing too. Here he's in a 1958 Ford, and that's the same with Fred Lorenzen. Here's some other names, just to show names of those who raced here. These are all well-known people. Ricardo Rodriguez, one of the major racers of Mexico. Super, he's like a hero in Mexico. He's in car 19. 45, Lloyd Ruby. 31, Jeffords. That's in one of the Scarabs. Here is Art Bunker. Here is, you can't see the whole car, but there's Augie Pabst. He's one of the men who will be at the dinner this on the 20th. So that's a huge deal to be able to hear him. Jim Rathman, well-known name in the racing world. Look at that beautiful car, Lister Chevrolet. Beautiful car. This photograph was taken early in the race because you know what? It did not look that way after the race. And I'm going to show you, okay? What's happening is that he, on the third place, was in third place on the 20th lap, and he loses a wheel. That's the car afterwards, okay? So he didn't get killed, which is good, but he was damaged pretty much there. So you can tell that Meadowdale Raceways was a course that was recognized as a course that demanded skill and precision. No kidding about that. It was no place for the faint of heart. This is an unbelievable example, and this is really something else. Look at this car. Ed Hamill is standing in front of this car, which is called an SR2, that he built for a gentleman named Roy Cumnick, who lived right here in Crystal Lake. Just passed away about a year ago. A friend, a good man. He built this car for him in 1965. Took 2 years plus to build this car. This car cost to build in 65, $25,000. Now, you know what a house cost back then in 65? $12,000, $13,000, $14,000, $15,000 for a nice home, you know? 25 grand. So this is no small pocket change. This picture was taken the day the car was completed. The very next day, this car will race at Meadowdale within 24 hours. So that night, Roy Cumnick got it taped up, numbered, and so on, takes it to Meadowdale. There's one problem. Look at how close this car is to the ground. It had a 2-inch clearance from the ground, okay? Which is okay. It's not a problem. It needs that for aerodynamics and for keeping the car on the road. That's important. But there was a problem. Remember before when I showed you that Monza wall, and I showed you how that tractor was going up there and how it was being made? It was actually paved that way as well. So when the rollers were making the Monza wall, they couldn't go around because it was concave and it was around. So you can't pave that. The only way to pave it back then with the equipment available was to go up and down, this way. Then they had to move over and go again. And then they had to go again. What happens? What does that do? It caused a rib effect. It couldn't get it perfectly smooth. So it was like this. So going 150 miles an hour on the Monza wall with a car with a 2-inch clearance, you're in trouble, okay? Hit the Monza wall, had 2 gas tanks, one on each side in the back fenders. It flipped on the Monza wall, totally upside down. The car dragged for 800 feet upside down on it with his helmet on the pavement with one of the gas tanks ignited. So there he is. In fact, when it came to a stop, his helmet was almost run through to his head. If he would have gone any further, he probably wouldn't be lived. He lived. He was injured. He had a punctured lung. He had broken ribs. But he was at the racetrack the very next morning waving the opening flag for the next races. Is that something? Unbelievable story. There's another picture of it. $25,000, 2 years' work gone within 24 hours. So this shows you, unbelievable. And I got to tell you though, the Midwest Motorsport Legend racetrack, wasn't just autos that raced there. It's remarkable the activity that took place at this racetrack. I'm going to show you some examples, okay? This is the SCCA National Championships. These show some of the cars that came down on the straightaway. Beautiful photograph. Here's stock cars. Those were raced there. Here's the Trans Am races. This is a big deal in 1968. Here they are shown there, the AMCs. There's, again, this is the winner of the Trans Am race in 68. Roger Penske. Remember that no Penske name? There he is. That's the famous Camaro. Oh, and by the way, the driver there was Mark Donohue. For any of those of you who know racing, Mark Donohue is a huge name in racing. Okay. So they actually had private clubs that came to the track as well. And the private clubs, what would happen, these people that had private cars that were fast. You can't go on the street. Well, you can if you watch the cops, don't get caught, you know. But the bottom line is, you know, it's great to be able to take your cars to a racetrack. So clubs would rent out the race course and use it for their fast cars. Here's the Chicago Corvette Club, which still exists to this day. These are the 22 original members that started the club back in the 50s. Volkswagen Grand Prix races. Those took place here at Meadowdale. Go-karts. These were fast go-karts, by the way. Motorcycle races. Even snowmobiles raced at Meadowdale Raceways. Isn't this amazing? So all this activity that was taking place. This is early 60s. Looking at these are like the Polarises. These are some of the earliest snowmobiles when they first came out. So I would say the early 60s, early to middle 60s. And still, in spite of the huge variety of races happening at Meadowdale, the last sanctioned race would take place in July of 1969. Opened in 58, so you got 11, 12 years. That was it. And it was going to be run on not the whole course, just a portion of the track, the 1.1 mile course. And the winner was Tony DiLorenzo, who is still alive and is still racing. I was up at Road America back, I think, 2 years ago. He was there racing his car. Here he is back at, this is the race though at Meadowdale that he won in his Corvettes. He actually had two cars. This is his car as well as that car there. Here they are coming up the uphill. If you walk the track and you're coming around the serpentine by the silo, then you start walking uphill. The uphill climb it's called. This is them coming up the uphill climb, and here they are in that turnoff that goes back to the straightaway. So this picture is taken at for those of you who know the course. So that was the last race, like I said, and then the track closed down. There was not any longer any races that were sanctioned races after 1969. So the track sat there, and you know what happens to most tracks that are closed down in this country? They're bulldozed over, made into subdivisions. This is the only ghost racetrack in existence in the country still intact. So we still have that to say about our track, okay? So unlike most racetracks that have closed and gone from this to this, we have this, Raceway Woods, okay? And this is how it looks back then. This is how it looks today. This is where Robert Walker got killed, right here. Monza Wall. The Monza Wall was taken down for the 1968 Trans Am races. It was flattened, and the pavement you see today was the pavement that was put down for those races in 68. So that was right here. Here's the straightaway. There it is today. When you walk this track, you can almost feel and hear the cars still running on this course. The energy is still there. I go back. Here's this here. This is coming down the straightaway. This is where it was washed out for years. Here's where the bridge is at now. See how it's closing in? I love this picture here because when you walk this track today around the silo, especially in the summertime when the trees are in full foliage, you have no idea that this is all back here. And it's not open like this anymore, but at that time, people were all over the place, like I said. There was a beer gardens back in here where people got their refreshments and so on. It was a fun time. People could come up to the track, watch the cars. What a fun thing to do. It was right here. That's how it looks today. When you're back by the back serpentine, this is how it looked on the track. This was the overpass for cars to come in from the 31 to get into the middle of the track for parking. That's how it looks today. Remember I showed you Di Lorenzo on his last 1.1 mile race coming up the uphill climb I told you about? Here it is coming up right here. Here's the turn where they were turning. That's right where it's at right here. That's how it looks today. Meadowdale Raceways holds a place in the memories and hearts of thousands that had the opportunity to experience the adrenaline rush of the race back in its day. Today, the area is renamed Raceway Woods. The adrenaline rush of the race has been replaced with the serene calm of nature, slowly recapturing her space. My sincere hope and desire that my new book will help to keep Meadowdale Raceways alive and in the hearts and minds of thousands for years to come. Thank you. Thank you.